The stars in the Kepler sector burned with the light of war. For 7 long years, 3 mighty alien races had fought over these dead worlds. The Valak Empire ruled with iron claws and massive warships. The Thrix Collective swarmed like angry insects across space. The Neth Consortium moved like living crystal, cold and calculating. All 3 wanted the same thing: total control of this part of the galaxy. Admiral Velaktar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher. He was 8 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds over the past 1,000 years. They were born warriors, raised to fight and die for the Empire. Velaktar had never lost a battle in his 40 years of service. "Report," he growled at his communications officer. "Sir, our forces have taken the mining stations around Kepler 442. The Thrix and Neth are falling back, but they're fighting hard. We've lost 12 ships today." Velaktar nodded. 12 ships was nothing. He had 200 vessels under his command in this sector alone. The Empire could afford the losses. What mattered was victory. What mattered was showing the other races that the Valak were the strongest. "Continue the attack. I want that planet under our control by tomorrow." Far across the battle zone, the Thrix Queen Mind felt the deaths of her children through the collective consciousness that linked all her kind. Each fallen warrior drone sent a pulse of pain through her massive form. She floated in the biofluid of her command ship, tendrils connected to every system, her mind touching every Thrix in the fleet. The Queen Mind did not think in words like other species. She thought in hunger, in growth, in the endless need to consume and expand. The Kepler sector had rich worlds full of resources that her children could eat and transform into more Thrix. The Valak and Neth stood in the way of the great feeding. They had to be destroyed. 300 bioships moved at her command. Each one was alive, grown from her own genetic material. They could repair themselves, adapt to new weapons, and birth new fighters even in the middle of battle. The Thrix had been expanding across the galaxy for 2,000 years, turning dead worlds into nurseries for their young. "Feed," she commanded her children. "Grow. Consume the enemy." On the far side of the system, Neth Coordinator Prime processed battle data with the speed of a quantum computer. Its crystalline form stood 12 feet tall, made of living mineral that could think and feel. The Neth were ancient, perhaps the oldest intelligent race in the galaxy. They had watched civilizations rise and fall while they calculated the perfect moment to act. Prime analyzed the current battle with cold logic. The Valak had superior firepower but poor tactics. The Thrix had numbers but lacked strategic thinking. The Neth had both advantages, but their forces were smaller. The mathematical solution was clear: wait for the other 2 to weaken each other, then strike at the perfect moment. 150 Neth ships hung in formation, their crystal hulls reflecting starlight like deadly jewels. Each vessel was a work of art and engineering, built to last for centuries. The Neth did not rush into battle like the hot-blooded Valak or swarm like the mindless Thrix. They waited, watched, and struck with precision. Probability of victory increases by 12.7% if we delay engagement for another 6 hours, Prime calculated aloud. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The 3 fleets had turned the Kepler 442 system into hell. Burning ships drifted between the planets like metal tombstones. Weapons fire lit up space in brilliant colors: red Valak plasma, green Thrix bioenergy, and blue Neth crystal beams. The planet below was caught in the crossfire. Kepler 442b had been a peaceful trading world before the war started. 20 million beings from dozens of different species had lived and worked there in harmony. They were not warriors or conquerors. They were merchants, farmers, teachers, and artists. They had no part in this fight between the great powers. Now their cities burned, their orbital stations were destroyed. Millions had already died, and millions more huddled in shelters praying for the fighting to end. Refugee ships tried to escape, but most were destroyed by stray weapons fire or deliberate attacks. The 3 fleets saw civilians as either resources to be taken or problems to be eliminated. Captain Lee Daeho had never heard of the Kepler sector until 3 days ago. He stood on the bridge of the UES Ironwill. humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Lee was 45 years old, with graying hair and calm brown eyes that had seen too many battles. He had served in Earth's military for 20 years, fighting in the border wars against pirates and hostile alien species. But this was different. This was genocide happening while the galaxy watched. "Commander Park," he said to his second-in-command, "show me those distress signals again." Commander Park Sojin was younger than her captain but just as experienced. She had been born on Mars and raised in the military academies. Her specialty was tactical analysis, reading battles like other people read books. She touched her control panel and the main screen filled with data. "We're receiving hundreds of emergency broadcasts from civilian ships in the Kepler sector," she reported. "Families trying to evacuate, medical ships under attack, refugee convoys being hunted down and destroyed." Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin looked up from his weapons console. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, only 28, but he was a genius with military hardware. "Sir, our orders are to patrol the border sectors. The Kepler sector is way outside our area." "Our orders," Lee said quietly, "are to protect innocent lives wherever we find them in danger." Chief Engineer Choi Mina had been listening from her station near the back of the bridge. She was 50 years old, a veteran of more wars than she cared to remember. Her job was to keep the ship running, but she had seen enough senseless killing to know when someone had to act. "Captain," she said, "the Iron Will is just one ship." "What you're talking about? That's a war zone with 3 major fleets." Dr. Han Ji-woo stepped forward from her position at the science station. As the ship's medical officer and xenobiologist, she understood alien cultures better than anyone else on the crew. She was 35, quiet and thoughtful, but passionate about saving lives. "The distress calls are getting worse," she said. "I'm reading communications in 47 different languages. They're all saying the same thing. Please, somebody help us." Lee stared at the tactical display showing the Kepler sector. 3 fleets, hundreds of ships, locked in a battle that had already killed millions. The smart move would be to report it to Earth Command and wait for orders. The safe move would be to turn around and go home, but Lee had not joined the military to make smart, safe moves. "Navigation," he ordered. "Plot a course for the Kepler sector. Maximum speed." "Sir?" The navigation officer looked confused. "That will take us into the middle of an active war zone." "I know exactly where it will take us," Lee replied. He activated the ship's communication system. "This is Captain Lee Dae-ho to all hands. We have received distress calls from civilian populations under attack in the Kepler sector. We are going to help them. I know this isn't what any of you signed up for when you joined this mission, but sometimes the right thing to do isn't the easy thing to do." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Commander Park spoke up. "All weapon systems ready, Captain." "Engineering reports. All systems normal," Choi Mina added. "Medical bay prepared for casualties," Dr. Han said softly. "Lieutenant," Kim smiled grimly as he checked his weapons panel. "Let's go show them how humans fight." The Iron Will turned toward the Kepler sector and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another star in the darkness. Ahead of them waited a war zone where 3 alien fleets had been killing each other for 7 years. None of those aliens had ever heard of humans. They were about to learn. In the Kepler sector, the battle continued. Valak ships pounded Thrix biovessels with plasma cannons. Thrix swarms overwhelmed Neth crystal ships with sheer numbers. Neth precision weapons carved through Valak armor, like hot knives through butter. Below them all, civilians died while the galaxy's great powers fought over territory and resources. Admiral Velaktar studied the tactical display and smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Soon the planet would be his. Soon the Thrix and Neth would be driven from this system. The Valak Empire would grow stronger, and he would be remembered as a great conqueror. The Queen Mind felt the hunger of her children and was pleased. Many would die today, but death was just another form of change. The weak would feed the strong, and the Thrix would spread across more worlds. Coordinator Prime calculated victory probabilities and found them acceptable. Logic dictated that the Neth would eventually control this sector. It was simply a matter of time and patience. None of them noticed the small distortion in space at the edge of the system. None of them detected the single ship dropping out of hyperspace, its energy signature unlike anything in their databases. The humans had arrived, but they would not announce themselves just yet. First, Captain Lee wanted to see exactly what they were dealing with. First, he wanted to understand the enemy. Then he would show them what happened when someone threatened innocent people while humans were watching. The war in the Kepler sector was about to change forever. The Iron Will hung in space at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a silent predator. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with growing anger. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his life. 3. Massive fleets surrounded the planet below. Hundreds of warships fired at each other in a deadly dance that had been going on for hours. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers in the darkness. Ships died in fire and twisted metal. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what they were doing to the civilians. "Commander Park," Lee said quietly. "Are you seeing this?" Commander Park. Sojin's face was pale as she studied her sensor readings. "Yes, sir. A Valak destroyer just fired on an unarmed medical ship. The Thrix are hunting down refugee transports, and the Neth..." She stopped, unable to finish. "The Neth are calculating the most efficient way to eliminate civilian evacuation routes." Dr. Han Ji-woo completed the sentence. Her voice shook with barely controlled rage. "They're treating innocent people like a math problem." Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin looked up from his weapons console. His young face was hard with anger. "Sir, I count at least 50 civilian ships under attack right now. Families, medical personnel, refugees. They're not even fighting back." Chief Engineer Choi Min-ah had seen many terrible things in her years of service, but this was different. This was systematic slaughter. "Captain, we have to do something." Lee nodded slowly. He had already made his decision, but he wanted his crew to understand what they were getting into. "Analysis, Commander Park. What are we facing?" Park called up detailed scans of the 3 fleets. "The Valak have 200 ships, mostly heavy cruisers and battleships. Their tactics are straightforward. Close range, heavy weapons, brute force. They're tough, but they're not very fast." She switched to the next fleet. "The Thrix have 300 bioships. They work like a swarm, overwhelming enemies with numbers. Individual ships are weaker, but they can repair themselves and adapt to new weapons during battle." Finally, she showed the Neth formation. 150 crystal ships. Highly advanced technology, perfect coordination, superior firepower. They're the most dangerous individually, but they rely too much on mathematical precision. "And us?" Lee asked. Park smiled grimly. "One ship. Unknown technology. Element of surprise." She paused. "Sir, even with our advantages, the odds are..." "The odds don't matter," Lee interrupted. "What matters is that innocent people are dying while we watch. Dr. Han, open a channel to all 3 fleets." Dr. Han's fingers danced over her console. "Channel open, sir." Lee stepped forward, his voice calm and clear. "This is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the United Earthship Iron Will. We are responding to distress calls from civilian populations in this system. Any vessel that fires upon non-combatants will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The response was immediate. Admiral Velektar's harsh voice crackled over the speakers. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering in Valak Imperial business. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The Queen Mind's alien thoughts were translated into words. "Small ship thinks to challenge the swarm. The swarm will consume you like all others." Coordinator Prime's crystalline voice was cold as space. "Single vessel poses 0.003% threat to combined fleet operations. Ignore and continue mission. Parameters." Lee looked around at his crew. Each of them nodded in turn. They were ready. "Well," Lee said quietly, "we tried diplomacy. Lieutenant Kim, target the Valak destroyer that's firing on medical ships. All weapons prepare to fire." "Sir, which weapon system?" Kim asked. Lee smiled. and it wasn't a pleasant expression. All of them. The Iron Will was not like other warships. Earth had spent centuries perfecting the art of war, learning from every conflict, every mistake, every innovation. While other species had focused on single tactics or weapons, humans had studied everything. They had taken the best ideas from across their history and combined them with technology that no alien race had ever imagined. Railguns charging, Kim reported. Plasma cannons online, nuclear torpedoes armed and ready, point defense systems active. Chief Choi, how are our engines? Lee asked. All systems running at optimal efficiency, sir. The new fusion reactors are producing more power than we know what to do with. Commander Park, tactical analysis. Park studied the enemy formations, with the eye of someone who had spent her entire life learning how to fight. The Valak are bunched together. They're not expecting an attack from this angle. The Thrix are spread out hunting civilians. They're vulnerable to area weapons. The Neth are in perfect formation, but that makes them predictable. Dr. Han, monitor their communications. I want to know how they react. Lee took a deep breath. In a few seconds, everything would change. 3 alien races that had never heard of humanity were about to learn that humans had very strong opinions about bullying civilians. All weapons, he ordered. Fire. The Iron Will unleashed hell. Rail. Gunslugs accelerated to 15% of light speed, crossing the distance to their targets in milliseconds. The Valak destroyer that had been hunting medical ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by kinetic energy that hit like the fist of an angry god. Plasma bolts, contained in magnetic fields stronger than anything the aliens had seen, carved through. Thrix bioships like hot knives through soft butter. The alien vessel's ability to repair themselves meant nothing when they were reduced to atoms. Nuclear torpedoes with artificial intelligence guidance systems weaved through the battlefield, avoiding civilian ships while seeking enemy targets with deadly precision. They found Neth crystal ships and detonated in brilliant flashes that lit up half the system. Point defense lasers designed to stop thousands of incoming missiles turned their attention to smaller targets. Thrix fighter drones died by the dozens, picked off with surgical precision. In 30 seconds, the human ship had destroyed more enemy vessels than most species lost in entire campaigns. The effect on the 3 alien fleets was immediate and devastating. Ships that had been hunting civilians suddenly found themselves under attack by weapons they had never seen before. Formations that had been perfect moments before dissolved into chaos as captains tried to understand what was happening. Dr. Han monitored their communications with growing satisfaction. Sir, they're completely confused. The Valak think they're under attack by some kind of superweapon. The Thrix Queen mind is trying to figure out what kind of predator could kill so many of her children so quickly. The Neth are recalculating their entire tactical database. Good, Lee said. Now let's see if we got their attention. He had. All 3 fleets were turning toward the Iron Will, their previous battle forgotten in the face of this new threat. Hundreds of alien warships began moving toward the single human vessel. Commander Park watched the tactical display with professional interest. Sir, they're converging on our position. Multiple attack vectors, coordinated assault patterns. They're taking us seriously now. How long before they reach weapons range? Lee asked. 12 minutes for the fastest Thrix ships, 15 for the Valak, 18 for the Neth. Lee nodded. That gave them time to save more civilians. Kim, target priority. On any ship attacking non-combatants. Show them what happens when humans get angry. The Iron Will moved through the battlefield like a shark through a school of fish. Its weapons found every enemy ship that threatened civilians, and those ships died. The human vessel seemed to be everywhere at once, its speed and maneuverability far beyond what the aliens thought possible. A Valak heavy cruiser tried to ram an escaping refugee transport. The Iron Will's railguns turned it into scrap metal before it got close. A swarm of Thrix fighters dove toward a hospital ship. Plasma bolts vaporized them before they could fire a shot. A Neth destroyer calculated the most efficient way to destroy a civilian convoy. Nuclear torpedoes made sure it never got the chance to try. Sir, Dr. Han reported, civilian casualties are dropping rapidly. Most of the refugee ships are making it to safe distance. Excellent. Now let's deal with our new friends. The first Thrix fighters reached attack range and opened fire with their bioweapons. Green energy bolts that could dissolve metal struck. the Iron Will's shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by defensive systems that bent space-time itself around the ship. Lieutenant Kim returned fire, and the alien fighters died in streams of superheated plasma. More Thrix ships arrived, then more until the space around the human vessel was filled with bioships trying to swarm their target. But humans had been fighting swarm tactics for centuries. Every battle against insects on Earth, every engagement, with overwhelming numbers, had taught them lessons. The Iron Will's point defense systems activated fully, filling space around the ship with deadly laser fire. Thrix fighters died in hundreds, their biomass scattered across the void. The Valak arrived next, their massive battleships firing plasma cannons that could melt through a mountain. The shots struck the Iron Will's shields and were deflected harmlessly into space. The human ship returned fire with railgun volleys that punched through Velak armor like it was made of paper. "Impossible," Admiral Velaktar snarled as he watched his ships die. "Nothing can penetrate our armor. Nothing can move that fast." What kind of species are these humans? He was about to find out. The three alien fleets moved together for the first time in 7 years. 650 warships from 3 different species, all focused on destroying one human vessel. It should have been the end of the story. It should have been a simple matter of overwhelming firepower. It wasn't. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the combined enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. Any sane commander would have been terrified. Any normal ship would have been destroyed in seconds. But the Iron Will was neither normal nor commanded by someone who thought like other species. "Chief Choi," Lee said calmly, "how are our power levels?" Chief Engineer Choi Minna checked her readings with the eye of someone who had spent 30 years keeping starships running. "All reactors operating at 100% efficiency, sir. We're producing enough energy to power a small city." "Excellent. Commander Park, tactical analysis of their new formation." "Commander Park." So-Jin studied the approaching fleet with professional interest. "They're trying to use combined tactics, sir. Velak ships in the center for heavy assault, Thrix swarms on the flanks to overwhelm our defenses, Neth vessels in support positions for precision strikes. It's actually quite clever. Any weaknesses?" Park smiled grimly. "They've never worked together before. Their communication protocols are different. Their tactical doctrines don't match. They're trying to coordinate 3 different military philosophies in real time." Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin looked up from his weapons console. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from all 3 fleets. They're charging every weapon they have." Dr. Han Ji-woo monitored the alien communications, her face pale but determined. "Captain, they're calling this a final solution. They plan to destroy us with one coordinated assault." Lee nodded. "Then let's show them why that's a bad idea. All hands, battle stations. Prepare for full combat operations." The Iron Will had been built with one purpose in mind: to be the most advanced warship humanity had ever created. Every system on the ship was designed by engineers who had studied 10,000 years of human warfare. Every weapon was tested by tacticians who had learned from every battle their species had ever fought. While other races had perfected single aspects of war, humans had mastered them all: speed, firepower, defense, tactics, strategy. Humanity had spent its entire history learning how to fight and win against impossible odds. Now those lessons would be put to the ultimate test. "All weapon systems online," Kim reported. "Railguns charged to maximum power. Plasma cannons ready. Nuclear torpedoes armed. Point defense lasers active." "Defensive systems?" Lee asked. "Gravitic shields at full strength," Chief Choi answered. "Quantum armor is holding steady. Evasive maneuvering systems ready. Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 60 seconds, Park announced. Lee stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by his crew. They were about to face the combined might of 3 alien civilizations. The smart thing would have been to run. The safe thing would have been to call for help. But humans had not conquered their own world by being smart and safe. "Open a channel to all enemy vessels," Lee ordered. Dr. Han nodded. "Channel open, sir." Lee's voice carried across space to 650 alien warships. "This is Captain Lee Dae-ho. You have 10 seconds to cease all attacks on civilian vessels and withdraw to minimum safe distance. This is your final warning. The response came from Admiral Velektar, his voice full of rage and disbelief. You face the combined might of 3 galactic powers, human. Surrender now, or be destroyed. The Thrix Queen mind added her alien thoughts. Small ship has killed too many children. The swarm will have revenge. Coordinator Prime's crystalline voice was coldly logical. Probability of human survival, 0%. Surrender and death will be swift. Lee looked around at his crew one more time. Commander Park stood ready at her tactical station. Chief Choi had her hands on the engine controls. Lieutenant Kim waited at his weapons console. Dr. Han monitored enemy communications with grim determination. 10 seconds are up, Lee said quietly. Kim, you are authorized to fire at will. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. The alien fleet attacked first, 650 ships firing as one. The space around the Iron Will filled with deadly energy. Velak plasma bolts that could melt steel, Thrix bioweapons that dissolved matter at the molecular level, Neth crystal beams that could cut through a planet's crust. All of it struck the human ship's shields and simply vanished. The Iron Will's defensive systems were based on technology that no alien species had ever imagined. Gravitic shields that bent space-time around the ship, quantum armor that existed in multiple dimensions at once, and energy absorbers that turned enemy weapons' fire into more power for their own systems. No damage to ship systems, Chief Choi reported with satisfaction. In fact, our power levels just increased by 12%. Impossible, Admiral Velektar snarled as he watched his fleet's opening barrage fail completely. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Apparently humans can, Commander Park said with a grim smile. Return fire, all weapons. What happened next redefined alien understanding of warfare. The Iron Will didn't just shoot back, it unleashed weapons technology that was centuries ahead of anything the 3 species had developed. Railgun slugs accelerated to ridiculous speeds, struck Velak battleships and punched straight through them, exiting the other side and hitting more ships. Behind them, single shots destroyed multiple targets. Plasma bolts contained in magnetic bottles struck Thrix bioships and didn't just destroy them. They sterilized entire sections of space, making it impossible for the organic vessels to regenerate or adapt. The aliens' greatest advantage became meaningless. Nuclear torpedoes with quantum guidance systems ignored all attempts to shoot them down or jam their sensors. They weaved through the enemy formation like living things, finding weak points in crystal armor and detonating with precision that turned mighty Neth vessels into glittering debris. But the most terrifying thing about the human ship wasn't its weapons, it was how it fought. The Iron Will moved through the combined alien fleet like it was dancing. Every shot was predicted and avoided. Every enemy movement was anticipated and countered. The ship seemed to know what its opponents would do before they did it themselves. How? Coordinator Prime calculated frantically as its perfect battle formations crumbled. How does one ship predict the actions of 650? Commander Park heard the alien's question through the communication intercepts and decided to answer. Because we've seen it all before. Every tactic you're using, every strategy, every formation, humans developed them and discarded them thousands of years ago. You're not fighting us. You're fighting our history. It was true. Humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. They had fought with sticks and stones, with swords and shields, with guns and bombs, with tanks and aircraft, and finally with starships and energy weapons. Every type of combat, every possible strategy, every tactical innovation, humans had tried it, tested it, and learned from it. The 3 alien species had each mastered one approach to warfare. The Velak relied on brute force. The Thrix used overwhelming numbers. The Neth trusted in mathematical precision. Humans had mastered all, 3 approaches and a dozen more besides. Lieutenant Kim's weapons found their targets with impossible accuracy. A single plasma bolt would strike a Velak cruiser at exactly the right angle to send it spinning into its neighbors. Rail gunshots would hit Thrix swarms at calculated points, causing chain reactions that destroyed entire formations. Nuclear torpedoes would detonate in perfect sequence, creating gravitational waves that tore apart Neth crystal ships. "Sir," Dr. Han reported, "I'm monitoring panic in all three fleets. They've never seen anything like this. Their commanders are losing control." Indeed, the alien fleets were falling apart. Ships collided with each other as captains tried desperately to avoid the human vessels' weapons. Formations broke down as individual commanders lost faith in their leaders' orders. The perfect coordination that had made the combined assault possible was dissolving into chaos. Admiral Velaktar watched his flagship's instruments in disbelief, as yet another Velak squadron was wiped out by impossible accurate fire. "Retreat," he ordered his remaining ships. "All vessels fall back to safe distance," but there was no safe distance. The human ship followed, its weapons reaching out across impossible ranges to find any vessel that still threatened civilians. Every ship that tried to attack refugee transports died. Every captain who targeted medical vessels found themselves facing humanity's wrath. The Queen Mind felt the deaths of hundreds of her children and screamed in anguish that rippled across the collective consciousness. Her perfect swarms were being torn apart by weapons that killed faster than her bioships could adapt. For the first time in 2,000 years of expansion, the Thrix were facing an enemy they could not consume. Coordinator Prime's calculations had become meaningless. Every probability matrix showed the same result: total defeat. The mathematical models that had guided Neth's strategy for millennia were useless against an enemy that fought with intuition, creativity, and ruthless efficiency. In less than an hour, the combined alien fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors. More than half of their ships were destroyed or disabled. The silence in the Kepler 442 system was strange and unsettling. For 7 years, this region of space had echoed with the sounds of war, weapon fire, explosions, dying ships. Now there was only the quiet hum of engines as scattered alien vessels maintained their distance from the single human warship that had changed everything. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the Iron Will's conference room, preparing for the most important meeting of his career. In a few minutes, he would be speaking directly with the leaders of 3 galactic powers who had just learned that humans were not to be underestimated. Commander Park So-jin finished her preparations at the communication console. "All systems. Ready for the conference, sir. I've established secure channels with all 3 fleet commanders." Dr. Han Ji-woo looked up from her cultural database. "Captain, I've been studying their psychology and social structures. This is going to be more difficult than the battle was." "How so?" Lee asked. "The battle was about proving we could fight," Han explained. "This is about proving we're worth listening to. Each of these species has dominated their part of the galaxy for centuries. They're not used to being told what to do by anyone, especially not by a species they've never heard of." Chief Engineer Choi Minna entered the room, carrying a data pad with technical specifications. "Sir, I've been analyzing the wreckage from the battle. Their technology is impressive in some ways, but they're centuries behind us in others. They don't understand how we do what we do." "Good," Lee said. "Fear of the unknown will make them more willing to negotiate. Lieutenant Kim, how are our weapon systems?" Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin checked his status board. "All systems operational, sir. The aliens know we're still fully armed and ready. That should help focus their attention." Lee nodded. He had no intention of starting another fight, but he wanted the alien commanders to remember what had happened to their fleets when they chose violence over diplomacy. Dr. Han opened the channel. The main screen in the conference room lit up, showing 3 separate video feeds. On the left was Admiral Velaktar, his reptilian features scarred and his yellow eyes burning with barely controlled rage. In the center was the Thrix Queen Mind, her massive form floating in biofluid, alien thoughts translated into words by her ship's computer. On the right was Neth Coordinator Prime, its crystalline body reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The 3 alien leaders stared at the human captain who had single-handedly destroyed half their combined fleet. Lee stared back calmly, his hands folded on the conference table. Finally, Admiral Velektar broke the silence. You wanted to talk, human? Talk. Very well, Lee said. Let me be clear about the situation. For 7 years, you have turned this sector into a graveyard. Billions of civilians have died while you fought over territory and resources. Entire species have been wiped out. Worlds have been reduced to radioactive wasteland. The Queen Mind's translated thoughts rippled with alien emotion. War is the nature of existence. The strong consume the weak. This is the way of all life. No, Lee said firmly. This is the way of predators. Humans have learned there is a better path. Coordinator Prime's crystalline voice held notes of calculation. Human tactical capabilities suggest advanced civilization. Why do humans concern themselves with inferior species? Lee leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of human moral evolution. Because someone has to. Because innocent people are dying while you play your games of conquest. Because strength without compassion is not strength at all. It's just organized brutality. Admiral Velektar's scales rippled with anger. You speak of compassion after destroying 400 of our ships? After killing millions of our people? I speak of justice, Lee replied. You were given warnings. You were offered the chance to stop attacking civilians. You chose violence instead. The deaths of your soldiers are on your hands, not mine. The truth of it hung in the air like a physical weight. All 3 alien commanders knew that the human was right. They had chosen to fight rather than negotiate. They had ignored his warnings. They had continued to slaughter innocents even after seeing what his ship could do. What do you want from us? The Queen Mind asked, her alien thoughts carrying notes of confusion. Territory, resources, submission. Lee smiled, and for the first time since the conference began, it was a genuine expression. I want you to stop killing each other. I want you to stop attacking civilians. I want you to prove that intelligent species can solve their problems without genocide. The 3 alien leaders looked at each other through their video links. They had expected demands for surrender, for tribute, for territorial concessions. They had not expected this. You want peace? Coordinator Prime calculated aloud. Between our 3 species. Probability of lasting cooperation extremely low. Historical precedent non-existent. Then it's time to make history, Lee said. Here are my terms. He activated a holographic display that showed the entire Kepler sector. First, immediate cessation of all military operations. No more attacks on each other's ships. No more bombardment of civilian targets. No more hunting of refugee vessels. Admiral Velektar's claws dug gouges in his command chair. Impossible. The Valak Empire does not negotiate with enemies. We conquer or we die. Then you die, Lee said simply. Because I guarantee that if you restart this war, more human ships will come, and they will not be as merciful as I have been. Threat was delivered in such a calm, matter-of-fact tone that it was somehow more terrifying than if he had shouted it. All 3 alien commanders had seen what one human ship could do. The thought of facing an entire human fleet was beyond their worst nightmares. Lee continued before they could respond. Second, establishment of neutral zones for civilian evacuation. Any ship that enters these zones with weapons active will be destroyed without warning. By whose authority? The Queen Mind demanded. By human authority, Lee replied. We are making ourselves responsible for protecting the innocent in this sector. If you don't like it, you're welcome to try stopping us. The memory of 400 destroyed ships was still fresh in their minds. None of them were eager to test human resolve again. Third, Lee continued, reparations to civilian populations that have been harmed by this war. Medical supplies, food, temporary housing, transportation to safe worlds. Coordinator Prime's crystalline form flickered with calculated outrage. Reparations require resources. Resources have value. Why should strong species give value to weak species? Dr. Han Jiwoo spoke up for the first time. Because it's the right thing to do. Because civilized beings take responsibility for the harm they cause. Because strength should protect the weak, not exploit them. Her words carried the weight of human moral philosophy developed over millennia of conflict and growth. The concept was alien to all three species, but they could hear the conviction in her voice. Fourth, Lee said, establishment of a joint commission to investigate war crimes and bring those responsible to justice. This time, all three alien commanders erupted. In protest, Admiral Velaktar roared his outrage. The Queen Mind's thoughts became a storm of alien fury. Coordinator Prime's crystalline form blazed with calculated anger. You want us to prosecute our own officers? Velaktar snarled. Impossible. You want us to judge our children as criminals? The Queen Mind demanded. You want us to punish logical military decisions? Prime calculated. Lee waited for their outrage to subside, then spoke quietly. I want you to prove that you're capable of justice, that you can distinguish between legitimate military targets and innocent civilians, that you understand the difference between warfare and genocide. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of moral judgment. The three alien species had built their civilizations on the idea that might made right, that the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. The human concept of justice, that even the powerful should be held accountable for their actions, was revolutionary. And if we refuse these terms? Admiral Velaktar asked finally. Lee's expression hardened. Then I call for reinforcements from Earth, and you learn what happens when humans stop being diplomatic. Commander Park brought up tactical displays showing the locations of the scattered alien fleets. Our communications with Earth Command have been monitoring this situation. Additional human vessels are already en route to this sector. How many depends on whether you choose cooperation or continued conflict. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. The aliens had no way of knowing that the Iron Will was currently the only human ship in this part of the galaxy. All they knew was that if one human vessel could destroy half their combined fleet, they definitely didn't want to face more. There is a fifth term, Lee said. Long-term cooperation between your three species. Trade agreements instead of territorial disputes. Scientific cooperation instead of arms races. Cultural exchange instead of xenophobic isolation. This was the most radical demand of all. The three species had been enemies for so long that the idea of working together seemed impossible. Humans will mediate these agreements? Coordinator Prime asked. Humans will guarantee them, Lee corrected. We will maintain a presence in this sector to ensure that the terms are followed. Any violation will result in immediate human intervention. 5 years had passed since the day Captain Lee Dae-ho brought peace to the Kepler sector. What had once been the bloodiest battlefield in known space was now something that would have seemed impossible to the alien commanders who had fought. There, it was thriving. The Iron Will hung in orbit around Kepler 442b, but the world below was nothing like the burning hell it had been during the war. Cities that had been reduced to rubble now sparkled with new construction. Orbital stations that had been destroyed in the fighting were rebuilt and expanded. Ships from a dozen different species came and went in peaceful commerce. Captain Lee stood on the observation deck, watching the daily miracle of former enemies working together. Construction crews that included Velak engineers, Thrix bioshapers, and Neth architects were building a new space station together. It was a thing of beauty, combining the strength of Velak engineering, the adaptability of Thrix biotechnology, and the precision of Neth crystal work. Commander Park So-jin joined him at the viewport. She wore new insignia on her uniform. She had been promoted to the rank of admiral and given command of the growing human peacekeeping fleet in the sector. 3 more Earth ships had arrived over the years: the UES Righteous Fury, the UES Defiant, Dawn, and the UES Merciful Thunder. Each one carried the same message that had ended the war. Humans would protect the innocent, no matter who threatened them. The morning reports, Admiral, Park said, handing Lee a data pad. He had been promoted as well to fleet captain, but he still preferred to spend his time on the Iron Will. Lee reviewed the information with satisfaction. Crime rates down another 12%, trade volume up 18%. The refugee resettlement program ahead of schedule. He looked up. Any problems? Minor ones, Park replied. A few Valak hardliners are still grumbling about having to follow human-imposed laws. Some Thrix young adults are testing boundaries. A couple of Neth factions are calculating ways to get around the cooperation treaties. Normal growing pains, Lee said. What about the war crimes tribunals? Park's expression grew more serious. Admiral Velaktar's trial concluded yesterday. The tribunal found him guilty of ordering attacks on civilian targets. 25 years in prison, loss of military rank, and mandatory service in refugee assistance programs. Lee nodded. The trials had been difficult but necessary. Many alien officers had claimed they were just following orders or conducting legitimate military operations. The human-led tribunals had made it clear that there was no excuse for targeting innocent people. How did he take the sentence? Better than expected. He actually requested to begin his service work immediately. I think seeing the human approach to justice has changed him. It was true. The concept of punishment combined with rehabilitation was alien to most species in the galaxy. The Valak traditionally executed criminals or exiled them. The Thrix consumed those who broke their laws. The Neth simply deleted offenders from their society. But humans had learned that justice was more than punishment. It was about teaching people to do better. Dr. Han Ji-woo approached from the medical bay, carrying her own reports. She had been busy with a project that was perhaps even more important than the peacekeeping efforts, teaching alien species about human concepts of medicine and ethics. Captain, the interspecies medical program is ready for its next phase, she announced. We've trained over 3,000 alien doctors in human medical ethics. They're ready to return to their home worlds and establish the first universal healthcare systems in their species' history. Lee smiled. Any resistance from their governments? Some, but it's decreasing. When people see that medical care doesn't have to be a privilege for the wealthy or powerful, they tend to demand it for everyone. The idea is spreading. Chief Engineer. Choi Minna came up from the engine room, wiping grease from her hands. Sir, the technical exchange programs are exceeding all projections. The Valak want to learn about our shield technology. The Thrix are fascinated by our computer systems. The Neth can't get enough of our engine designs. Are we sharing too much? Lee asked. It was a constant concern. How much human technology could be safely shared without creating new threats? The Oversight Committee reviews every transfer, Choi replied. We're sharing defensive technologies and civilian applications but keeping military secrets secure. Though honestly, sir, I don't think any of them want to fight us again. Indeed, the 3 alien species had learned hard lessons about challenging human military power, but more importantly, they had learned that cooperation brought benefits that conquest never could. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin, now a full commander and chief tactical officer for the peacekeeping fleet, joined the group. Sir, we're receiving another request for human intervention. The Androl system, about 40 light-years from here, 2 species locked in a border war, civilian casualties mounting. Lee looked at his senior staff. 5 years ago, they had been a single ship crew responding to one distress call. Now they were the core of a peacekeeping force that covered multiple sectors and protected dozens of species. Recommendations? He asked. The Defiant Dawn is closest to that system, Park said. Captain Oh Tae-sung could be there in 6 hours. Do it, Lee ordered. Same protocols as always. Protect the civilians first, worry about politics later. As his staff dispersed to carry out their duties, Lee remained at the viewport watching the bustling activity around Kepler 442b. A Valak cargo ship was docking at the same station as a Thrix biotransport. Neth crystal miners worked alongside human engineers on a new asteroid processing facility. Former enemies had become partners, and partners were becoming friends. His contemplation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Admiral Velaktar entered the observation deck, escorted by a human security officer. The former Valak fleet commander looked older and more tired than he had during the war. But there was something different in his eyes, something that might have been peace. Fleet Captain Lee, Velaktar said formally. I wanted to speak with You before I begin my service sentence. Lee dismissed the security officer and gestured for the alien admiral to join him at the viewport. What's on your mind, Admiral? I have been thinking about our conversation 5 years ago, Velaktar said slowly, about justice and compassion and protecting the weak. These were not concepts I understood then. And now? Velaktar stared out at the peaceful scene below. Now I see Velak children playing with Thrix younglings and Neth fragments in the rebuilt cities. I see former enemies working together to build something greater than any of us could create alone. I see what you meant when you spoke of strength. Serving justice. He turned to look directly at Lee. I have a question, human. When you first arrived in this system, you could have simply destroyed all our fleets and claimed this territory for Earth. Why didn't you? Lee considered the question carefully. Because territory isn't what humans want from the galaxy. We want to prove that intelligent species can do better than endless war and conquest. We want to show that the strong can protect the weak instead of exploiting them. And if your species is wrong, if cooperation and compassion are weaknesses that other species will exploit, Lee smiled, then we'll deal with those species the same way we dealt with you, with overwhelming force followed by an offer to do better. Velaktar made a sound that might have been laughter. The human way. Speak softly and carry the biggest weapons in the galaxy. Something like that. The former admiral was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. There is something you should know, Fleet Captain. Word of what happened here has spread throughout the galaxy. Other species are talking about the humans who ended a 7-year war in a single day, and then spent 5 years proving that peace was better than conquest. And? Some are inspired, some are curious, some are terrified. Velaktar's yellow eyes gleamed, but all of them are watching. What you have built here will either become a model for the rest of the galaxy or a target for those who fear change. Lee nodded. He had expected this. Humans had proven that a better way was possible, but not all species would welcome the implications. Let them come. We've proven that human ideals are worth fighting for. Indeed you have. Velaktar straightened to his full height and gave Lee a formal military salute. It has been an honor to serve as your enemy, Fleet Captain Lee. I hope it will be an even greater honor to serve the cause of peace. As the former admiral left to begin his sentence of helping war refugees, Lee reflected on how much had changed. The Kepler sector had become the most prosperous and peaceful region in known space. Former enemies worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Species that had never known anything but warfare were learning about cooperation, justice, and compassion. But Velaktar was right, the galaxy was watching. And not all of it liked what it saw. Commander Park returned to the observation deck. Sir, we're receiving long-range communications from Earth Command, Priority Alpha. Lee followed her to the communications center, where the main screen showed the familiar face of Admiral Kim Yun-seo, the head of Earth's Defense Council. She looked pleased but concerned. Fleet Captain Lee, Admiral Kim said, congratulations on the 5-year anniversary of the Kepler Accords. The peace you've built, there has exceeded all our expectations.